Well, what is going on, everyone? Welcome back to Kitchen Table TCG. My name is Louie. I hope you're having yourself a fantastic day. Today, we're going to talk about Sorcery Contested Realm. I want to give you my thoughts on what does success look like for Sorcery Contested Realm over the next 3 to 10 years and that thing. I want to shoot you guys something real quick though. I do have some play mats available. We're down to our last 10, 15 of these double-sided play mats. Check this out. This is a Kitchen Table TCG play mat, and it has 2 play mats that make 1 artwork. So if you're teaching people how to play or at your house, you can have that. But then you can just take your Sorcery play mat, and when you go to an LGS to play an event, it just lines up right there, and you can play in an event with your half of the playmat. So check that out at gamegrove.gg if you're interested. We may do some different ones in the future. I'm working on some artwork stuff for that, and we'll have that for you in the future. But this is all we got left of these ones right now. So I'll leave a link about that in the comment section. So let's get into defining sorcery and what does success look like for this TCG. You guys know on the channel I've talked a lot of different TCGs, and we've talked a lot about what does success look like for those. And for other games, what I've said is it has to overtake Magic the Gathering. It has to become the new biggest TCG. It has to be in every store. It has to be in whatever. We've talked about Lorcana. I really believe for Lorcana, in order to utilize the IP of Disney, it has to be a top 4 TCG. It has to kind of break that mold and be in a lot of game stores. We talked about there's a battle between Lorcana and One Piece and that kind of thing. We talk about a lot on the podcast on Fridays if you guys haven't been there. But for sorcery, I think that success looks different than that. I think I want to evaluate sorcery and what they're aiming to be and the culture that they have created in the world of people who like sorcery already and who are already involved in the community. And I want to look at what I think their vision of success is in the next 5 to 10 years. I want to start off by saying this. I don't know that Sorcery's vision for success and the team at Eric's Curiosa is the same vision as what I have for success. I don't know that. But what I want to give you is my perspective, looking at how they are creating their booster boxes, looking at how they are creating their gameplay, looking at how they are creating their whole business model. I want to look at what I think success looks like for them and how I will then evaluate that on the channel as a sorcery content creator. So I want to be very clear with that. This is not anything that Eric's Curiosa has said. This is not anything that Simon or the team has said. This is just my perspective and my opinions. If I was going to speculate, what does success look like, not what does sex look like, what does success look like for Sorcery Contested Realm. So first I want to identify what it not is, what it is not, what I don't think this means for sorcery. I do not think that sorcery needs to be a top 4 trading card game in the world for success. I do not, this is very different from where I've been in the past on indie TCGs. I'm changing my tune on that. I do not think that sorcery is going to come in and overtake Magic the Gathering and be the biggest TCG in the world. I'm not there. I do not think that is what success looks like for Sorcery Contested Realm. I don't even think it needs to be in every LGS and a top 4 that everybody knows about. It's a household name. You can say Yu-Gi-Oh, you can say Disney TCG, right? And it's a household name. Or One Piece is a game that is very popular in terms of the IP is popular for younger generation. Probably nobody watching this channel, but it's something that people know. I don't think it needs to be a top 4 game. In other words, I don't think it needs to be within every LGS in America and being sold on large platforms online. I don't think it needs to be a success and be in Walmarts and in Targets and in that kind of thing. I don't think that that's the way that sorcery needs to go. We'll talk about what it needs to do or what success looks like, but first I want to identify what it not is. I don't think that it needs to have a mainstream IP, an intellectual property that is made into movies and t-shirts and different things. I would love to see them do things on the Dust system to give us, merch. I think the community wants that, and I think that's a cool, small, tiny revenue generator for Sorcery. But I don't think we're going to see Pokemon-style Sorcery plushies and in merchandise and putting the brand on everything and putting the creatures on everything. I don't think that is what success looks like for Sorcery. I don't think they need to hone in to their intellectual property as much as they do other things. And then the last thing, I don't think that Sorcery needs to be successful in the fact that I don't think they need to have a ton of employees and a bunch of different revenue sources and all this different large corporation stuff that you see from a lot of the games that are up and coming of what they want to do. The size of the game of Sorcery is a really big question mark on how big does it get. So now I want to get into what does that mean for the success of the game and to be a game that stands the test of time and that continues into 5, 10, 15 years from the future, because that matters. That matters a lot. It matters a lot that Sorcery can continue to be a trading card game in the next 5 to 10 years. So what does success look like? What does that mean? I think number one, the success rate of Sorcery means that it still has a healthy and growing community. And I want to be very clear on this. There's no number in my mind that Sorcery has to reach in the next 5 to 10 years. I think Sorcery, I'm going to throw in the biggest word here that I think matters for Sorcery. Sorcery advertised itself as a boutique card game. Okay, it's been a point of contention on the podcast early on because how do you, George said in the videos and the podcast, how do you have a boutique game that's made and printed in China and that kind of stuff? It's been a whole thing, but the point boutique means that it feels smaller. That its goal is to be a tight-knit community, a tight-knit game that has this kind of culture of it feels like what Magic the Gathering used to be before Magic the Gathering and Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro's took this thing and said it has to be mainstream. They took D&D, right? D&D used to be this kind of in the back room, and it used to have this kind of feeling. I don't know, like I don't know how to explain it. Just like this feeling of it was special because it was kind of this secret, right? This thing that felt good. It felt like anyway, and then Magic took that and they wanted to make it mainstream, right? They want everybody playing it. They want it to be this household name, this big huge thing, which is great for Magic the Gathering, probably where Magic needs to be. But Sorcery says that they want to be a boutique card game, something that that feels special, that is maybe smaller and less of a mass production thing and feels smaller. So, but what it needs though, in order to be successful, I think is a growing community. In other words, in 5 to 10 years, we can't be the same size we are, but we need to feel the same. We need to have a sense of it's growing, not necessarily at this rapid pace though, where there's 1 million players, right? Like if right now there's 6,000 backers of Sorcery on the Kickstarter, let's go and throw out a number. Let's say that 5,000 people have played the game of Sorcery. And of those 5,000 people, 1,000 people actively, play. I would love to see in 5 to 10 years, 50,000 people have played Sorcery, and 10,000 people are actively playing and engaging in the gameplay side of the game. And then you have the collectors and the investors and that other, all that stuff increases as all those things increase. But the important part is that Sorcery as a community just has to be healthy and growing. There's no percentages that really matter on that thing. And I think that term boutique is really important for Sorcery, that it has to feel like the goal isn't to cash grab and make it the next big thing. The goal is to cultivate and grow a community of people who love the cards, love the art, love the gameplay, love collecting, love talking and digesting and being involved in the game, and that is the focus, not some abstract number of revenue source or whatever. That is, in my opinion, one of the things that maybe people can't verbalize, but they are frustrated with Magic the Gathering, is that it feels like Magic the Gathering is just a revenue stream and a revenue cow for Hasbro. Whereas what we want as consumers, I think, is to feel like we matter and that Magic the Gathering as an entity matters. And I think with Sorcery, that is why we're seeing a lot of people come into the world, from the vintage kind of Magic the Gathering side, because they found something that they enjoy and they love. This boutique, I think, is a great word, of loving and caring about the actual thing more than we've seen at the corporate level from Hasbro. So I would love to see them continue then to commit to the culture of that. But then here's the kicker: that part of that culture is also collectible, and so this is where we've seen some games. Rudy just did a video where he was pissed about the print run of a couple specific games, and this is what matters. There is that the term culture and community and also collectible is part of what makes Sorcery tick. That is part of this ecosystem of Sorcery, that they are respecting the collectability of the game. And that has to be a thing for Sorcery. That matters so much for the DNA of who a Sorcery fan is right now. And you got to keep that community growing and caring and being involved in. And that's a big community in the trading card world. There's a lot of people who collect trading card games. So if you continue to cultivate that and to grow that, you can increase your print run a little bit. But you have to, obviously in 10 years, we can't be printing 29,000 alpha boxes, right? Like we can't keep the print runs the same. They have to grow. As a company, they have to grow, but they have to respect the collectability side of that. They have to grow at a percentage basis. They can't just, 10x their print run in 2 sets. They have to scale it, and they have to protect. They have to scale it in a way that protects the collector and the investor and the person who cares about that. And it's a balance. We talked about this with beta. You also need players. You also need that kind of growth, and you need all that stuff to grow. But while you are growing, you have to protect the collectability, and that is what success looks like, in my opinion, for Sorcery. It almost goes back to that. I guess I'm going to go back to the idea that Sorcery is an alternative trading card experience. Where Magic the Gathering is the mainstream, right? If you look at it from a music perspective, like Magic the Gathering starting to feel like the Taylor Swift, right? The whatever of trading card games. Maybe Pokemon would be the Taylor Swift. I don't know, whatever you want to call Magic the Gathering. But the alternative, the kind of grungy rock and roll, that style of music is what I believe Sorcery can be in the industry, where it's never going to be the mainstream thing, but it can be this kind of alternative thing. I think Sorcery, we've talked about this on the channel, is an amazing second TCG to anybody who, I was just talking to somebody today who collects Pokemon, and they've started collecting in Sorcery and they've started playing. They never played Pokemon, but they've actually started out collecting Sorcery, and now they've started playing Sorcery, and they love the collectability baked in. So I think that kind of attitude is a really great thing. And then based on that, then this is the kind of interesting thing from my perspective. Based on that, it's going to be a successful kitchen table game. And I want to hone in on this a little bit. First off, I think that Sorcery needs LGSs. I think that you need to have some idea of organized play. I do think you need that. You saw the Mortify organized play mat here that you can get here at Game Grove if you're playing in events and all that kind of stuff. But you need organized play, but Sorcery doesn't need organized play in the way that I think a lot of the other games do. Because Sorcery has this like kitchen table feel baked into it because of the board game style. You're moving your stuff around. It feels like it's a good transitional thing to people who like to play games at home at their kitchen table. So while Sorcery needs an organized play platform, I think they will really grow wider based on advocating and experiencing and creating ways for people to play at the kitchen table and creating opportunities. And I don't know what that looks like. That's honestly one of the stretch goals. I think if I was on the team at Sorcery, I would be looking at is like, how do we create at-home play experiences with our product? How do we make it more interesting for Louis to play this game with his wife, right? Like, what is something that we can sell or give the consumer to increase the reasoning to say, hey, I'm gonna try to get my wife to play this game again, or I'm gonna try to play this with my kids, not my kids because they're too young, but I'm gonna try to play this with my high school kids in order to grow the game and that kind of thing. I think that is a big way that Sorcery will grow, is how they lean into the kitchen table experience. Now, the LGS matters. Don't hear me wrong. Like, LGS and organized play matters, but I don't think that it matters as much as maybe I thought it did for other card games in the past. I think what I've learned from the last year of owning a business too, so many people come in for Magic on release day and they don't stay for pre-release. They take the box home and they play sealed with their family. They play, there's probably 4 or 5 people come into my store, buy boxes, and then take them home to engage in the product at home. And that market is really good for Sorcery, I think. All right, the last thing I want to hone into, it goes back to the board game side. There's a company called Stonemaier Games that create my favorite game of all time, my favorite board game of all time, called Scythe, or however you want to pronounce it. Amazing game. And they have a really great growth rate. They have created this amazing game that then they have branched out into doing other games and other things. And one of the things that they did was they took Scythe, which is this beautiful, amazing art, really great physical card, tabletop game. It's got mechs and it's got different things that you're moving around on the board. It's amazing on the board state. But then they created a digital game for it, and they invested tons of money into this. And it has done so well for them from a business perspective, but also as a consumer, I can hop on and learn how to play Scythe at the online, on the video game, the Scythe video game. It's not Tabletop Simulator or whatever. It teaches you how to play. It's an actual video game. And then because I now know how to play, I can then buy the board game and teach my friends and family how to play because I had something to help me learn how to play. And that is the biggest issue for a game like Sorcery, in my opinion, for any TCG, is like when you grow online, which is the way the world works right now. In 2023, all these games are growing not at a local game store, but because of content creators like Rudy, or maybe to a lesser degree to me, or to whoever's making content for the game, comes in and you follow them and you see a game that they're talking about. You're scrolling around on YouTube or on Twitter or whatever, and you end up following the game and being involved in it. And that is where the games are growing. The problem with that, though, is that you don't know how to play. It's hard for me to teach you how to play. Even if I did learn to play video, you're going to have questions. And those questions, you can't just call me. You can't just sit down at the table with me. And what Scythe has done, what Stonemaier Games has done, is they've created a digital client that then hones people in to be able to grow their board game at the board game level. And so this is going to be crazy. This is the lunacy, loco Louie here. But if over the next 5 to 10 years, if Sorcery and Eric's Curiosa can create a digital version of Sorcery where you can play Sorcery on a digital client, I'm not talking about Tabletop Simulator, something that actually walks you through and teaches you how to play the game, that would grow this game like crazy. The gameplay for Sorcery is so much fun, but it takes a lot to learn. It is a game that is not super easy to learn. It is not your easy entry level TCG, in my opinion. It is a game that it's tough to learn. It's a deep game. There's a lot of mechanics. There's a lot of rules. It's not oversaturated. I don't think it's overcomplicated or anything like that, but it's not the easiest game to learn. So by having a digital client, just like Scythe as a board game is an incredibly difficult game to learn. It's a Euro game. It's whatever. So if you have that, it goes a long way. Now here's the kicker though, is like Eric and his team, like Eric worked for a video game company. He was a founder of a massive multiplayer online video game. That is not outside of the realm of possibility for Sorcery. And that is a stretch goal that I think I would love to see in the 5 to 10 years. We'll talk about that more in another video, I think. But anyway, going down to the end of the thing, I think at the end of the day, what success looks like for Sorcery, in my opinion, if I can sum it into one sentence, would be that it is the #1 second TCG for people to play. In other words, where Magic the Gathering originally wanted to be a game that you played after Dungeons and Dragons, a game that you played as a secondary thing. You would play D&D, and in your off time, you'd sit down and play a game of Magic the Gathering. I would love in the next 5 to 10 years to see Sorcery become the #1 second TCG for TCG players. And not to say that people don't choose Sorcery as their #1 game. There'll be a lot of that. But I would love to see a good size of people say, yeah, I play Magic the Gathering and I also play Sorcery. And this works with their once a year timeline, right? Where they're releasing a set once a year. I play Pokemon, or I play Lorcana, or I play One Piece, but I also play Sorcery. And then when Sorcery has their yearly release, a large group of people come and revisit Sorcery, and you see the game grow over that, couple months at the window of pre-release and spoiler season and the release of the product. And it grows over that sense. And then people, go back to their Lorcanas and their Magics and their whatever. And you see the kind of the growth rate for Sorcery kind of stagnate a little bit. And then the next set comes out and people come back and revisit because they are engaging with the hobby as a secondary way to engage with TCGs. I think, again, I don't want to lose this. There will be people, and I think it's successful if people are choosing it for their first TCG too. But if a large group of people are choosing it to play in addition to their main game, I think that's a huge win. And I think it's something that nobody is shooting for that. Nobody is advocating or trying to be this game that's a kitchen table game that you play in addition to another game. And that's a huge market. There's a lot of people there that's a potential too. So anyway, let me know what you think. What does success look like for a game like Sorcery, a boutique card game? What does the success look like for that? Really curious to hear what you think in the comment section. And if you want to get one of these mats, we have there's 15 of them left. I think that's it. So have yourselves a great day. Be kind to the people around you. We'll see you again next video.